Okay. So while we're waiting, let's go through our, can you hear me? I think you can. Make sure you have your microphones off. If you can turn off your cameras, that'll be great. Pop your student IDs in, which you are doing. Now, we do have a Q&A at the end of today's session. So if you can save up your questions, that would be good. But yep, Murray is here, so he's going to keep an eye on the chat. So if you do have any urgent questions, thanks, Murray. Any urgent questions, you can. Yes, you can retrieve the recording later. Yes, the slides will be up. They will be up ASAP. Murray's working on that right now. So what do we got? 1 more minute. Okay, so what we will do while we're just waiting for a few more people to pop in, but everybody's streaming in now, which is fantastic. Let's do our acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the Turrbal and Yugara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respect to their elders, laws, customs and creation spirits, and we recognise that these lands have always been places of teaching, research and learning. Okay, so it's right on 1 o'clock, so I think we should get going. Okay, so we've just got a little bit of a welcome at the beginning with some important information. We're going to talk about writing about research. That does say proposal. The L's not there. Well, it is there, but it's covered by the image. Sorry about that. We're going to look at some strategies to inform and persuade your readers. We're going to have a peer discussion and look at thinking and writing critically, and we've got our Q&A session as well. We do have a few prompts through the session for you to do some activities so that you're not sort of just sitting, listening the whole time. So these are just for you to think about and just to encourage you to start actioning the strategies we're going to talk about today. Today's resources, as we said, they're going to be up on Blackboard. So Mari's going to put some links in the chat as we go through. So if you miss any of those, don't panic, because I'll also send you those as part of the survey email that we send after our events. So yeah, they'll be up on Blackboard under the academic writing and the event resources. The recording may not be up today because it does take a little bit of time to download, but definitely be up there tomorrow and I'll keep you in the loop around that. So there is a lot of content today, so don't feel too pressured because you will have access to it all and the links as well. I just wanted to quickly talk about the difference between circles and workshops. Today is a workshop, so it's a lot of the theory and the principles of writing practices, and we also do the peer discussion. The writing circles are a bit more interactive, and workshops are all recorded, most of the writing circles as well. And the writing circles, we often ask you to do something to prepare to come, so keep your eye on those UniHub emails. Okay, so our goals for today, quite broad and quite big. You can see those there. And I do want to add as well that it doesn't matter which research degree that you're enrolled in, there's going to be tips and strategies relevant to everybody. all of our events and resources are designed for HDR students, okay? This includes PhD, Masters, Doctoral, and also don't forget that the workshop is about writing, okay? I'm not going to be telling you what your content is because I don't know. You're a diverse cohort, you're studying different fields of research, you're writing different kinds of documents, but the principles will still be the same. So as we go through, have a think about how everything relates exactly to you. I also want to flag something that's really important as well, is we've got critical thinking and writing as the last one, the last goal, but we're going to look at it all the way through, you know, understanding and thinking about the purpose of your proposal, the strategies, all of that is about thinking critically. Okay, so it's not really the last section that's going to be exactly about critical thinking, it's the whole workshop. Okay, so also another goal is a pep talk. Writing is hard, okay, and writing about research is even harder. So I really want to encourage you to implement as many of these strategies as you can. And I also really want you to be confident writers. You know, that's why you're coming to these workshops, is to find out more and improve your knowledge. So that's really one of my main aims, is to help you to feel more confident. So what I want you to do straight away is start thinking. Now, I did mention this in the workshop reminder email that you received yesterday. So if you didn't read it, this will be a bit of a shock, but that's okay. If you're still not sure exactly, you're still working on this, that's perfectly fine and understandable, but we need to start somewhere. And honestly, your research problem is your starting point. We're going to see that all the way through. Okay, so at the very least, just even if you can write some keywords about your research problem, and even write down a couple of benefits that your research findings might ultimately have. So, and who would be those beneficiaries, and how are they going to benefit as well? So jot down a couple of points while we go through. This is going to be what your discussion with your peers is going to be in the breakout rooms. Please don't feel stressed or pressured. Okay, just do your best, and we've got to start somewhere, and your research problem is definitely the place to start. So to give you a hand, how about these two examples? So first one is up my alley. HDR students often feel anxiety and stress when writing about their research. So it's a bit of a problem. It's not very clear yet, but it's a starting point, isn't it? Students often feel anxiety and stress. So the problem really could be, what are we going to do about it? Who would benefit? If we have confident HDR writers, students, clearly, supervisors, the faculties, the universities. Will society benefit, or industry? Will the government? Seems pretty broad, but it's somewhere to start, isn't it? What about our other example? Patients who undergo chemotherapy often experience debilitating nausea. Okay, seems like a problem. Again, it's not very narrow, is it? But it's a starting point. So if we've got the patients having less nausea, okay, if we're investigating how to do that, who's going to benefit? Patients, hospitals, healthcare providers, maybe the families, whole of society, government. Government pay for the healthcare, don't they? Well, we pay, and the government organises it. So just that's what I'm looking at, all right, is with your examples, is even if it's as broad as those, that's going to be okay. It's a good way to start, but we do want to narrow it down eventually. All right, now, I know we're talking about writing today, but as I mentioned, doing a research degree is hard. Writing is challenging as well, but it's also really rewarding. And as you're starting your degree, it's never too early to start about all the skills that you want to improve. Yes, writing, but there's another 20 skills as well. So this wheel is showing you all of those skills. So we have, to help you navigate these skills, the HDR assessment tool. If you came to orientation, you would have seen Murray explain about that. This is a perfect time. So pop into the assessment tool. Murray's put the link in there, And you're self-assessing your skills and figuring out the gaps and figuring out what you want to improve. Okay, the really good thing about the writing tool is you can keep track and record your development, and you can use that on your CV, your annual progress reports. It's a really good way to keep track of everything that you've been doing. Okay, we also have a similar tool for writing, which will come in handy for all of you. It's on Blackboard as well. Basically, you self-assess your writing skills, and then the tool helps you figure out what you can attend to help you plug those gaps. Now, I noticed at orientation, students were very eager to know about milestones. There was a lot of questions around that. We don't have time for that today. This is where you're going to find that information, though. I know it is important, absolutely, and we talk about how important planning is. So go and find the information out. We've got a milestone Q&A event on the 14th of April that Murray's going to put a link for you, and you can always email the Graduate Research Centre, okay? So milestones are important, but we're not going to talk about them today. Another thing I want to flag as well, what kind of thesis are you writing? There's 3 different main kinds: the monograph, thesis by publication, or creative works. You should have an idea of which one you're doing by now. So different ones will have different, for different research fields, they'll suit different things, okay? Discuss with your supervisor. There's QUT guidelines for each type. You can see there, Murray's put the link. Go into ePrints, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. Let's go in now. Okay, so that's what it looks like. You do a thesis search, and you can actually ask which thesis format you want to have a look at, okay? So a lot of that stuff that I just told you about, we're actually not really talking about today, but it's important to flag for you, and it's important to be considering those things right now. Also, QUT's research community has a page. You can see there, I've highlighted a couple of the tiles that are really useful for you guys. Now, if you're not a staff member as well as a student, most students do have a staff number. This is on the digital workplace. If you aren't able to get access to that, ask your supervisor if they can help you out there, or ask HiQ, the Graduate Research Centre. There'll be a way for you to navigate those tiles there. A lot of really good information that will help you improve your research skills. Okay, so let's get into writing about research. So as we said, it is challenging. We have to think hard. It's a complex cognitive activity, probably one of the hardest ones that we have to do in our life is writing a research thesis. So it's important to acknowledge that and to know that you're always going to have these questions. Am I doing everything right? Am I going to find anything in my study? Will anybody care? So again, we come back to the idea of your confidence. Yes, you most likely are doing it right, but you can improve. Yes, you will find something, even if it's small, and small is okay. Will anyone care? Yeah, they will if you persuade them to care, okay? So you don't know what you don't know. That's an interesting one, isn't it? But you guys are researchers, so you need to find out what you don't know using your critical thinking. I just gave you a whole lot of information, didn't I? So you would have already realized, as we talked about those things just before, what of those things are useful to you and what aren't? What is the priority for those things as well? So all of that information and support that QUT provides, you need to access it. You need to connect with your peers and supervisors, seek support if you're lost or you're unsure. So be an active learner. Don't be passive. Be like a little sponge. Read everything, want to know everything, and want to improve all of your skills. do your research about research writing. We just acknowledge that it's hard and we don't know everything. Here's some examples of some useful books. Not all of them will be applicable to all of you. Belcher, the one at the top there, that's about writing your journal article. She's one of my favorites. You could still utilize her for your thesis. The University of Chicago YouTube video that Murray just put in the links is excellent. It's about an hour, but he's amazing. I've forgotten his name, but he's awesome. Really, really good video to watch. And thinkwell.com.au, lots of writing guides and planners and motivational materials. So I would, if I was you, I'd be accessing those as well. A lot of them are free. Okay, so as we said, you don't know what you don't know, so you need to go and find out. All right, so your research proposal is very important. It's a document that needs to inform and persuade. So in order to do those things, a really good way to begin is make sure that your mechanics of writing are going well and that you understand and you see whether you need to improve anything at all. So if we have a clear understanding of the moving parts within your documents, that's going to be a good place to begin. So we need to engage the reader. So you've got two levels of writing in your documents. You've got your cohesion and your coherence. So cohesion we call the micro level. So it's the words, the sentences, and the paragraphs. The coherence is the macro level. It's the big picture. It's the paragraphs, the flow of your sections, the flow of your chapters. So where they overlap, these two parts, is in the paragraph level. So are you fossilized into bad habits? It's a horrible word, but that's the word that we use when we're talking about writing and we're talking about language, is you most likely do have some bad habits that you don't even know you're doing. All right, which is why we need to write and proofread and get feedback and read books and come to these sorts of workshops. So be an active learner, examine your skills using the tool, and make sure you're really clear on all of the moving parts of writing, the cohesion and the coherence. Here's the boring bit. Conventions. So you're part of a research community. You need to write in the way that your research community expects you to. You need to learn these conventions. I know that referencing is boring, but it's a fact of life when you're a researcher. And there's lots of rules around referencing as well. So make sure you understand those rules, the discourses involved in your research community as well. Have attention to detail and be consistent. If you submit a research proposal with errors in terms of referencing, it's not going to look good, is it? Okay, so make sure you're very clear on what you need to do. Look at a style manual. APA 7 is the one that I know the best, and it actually, that referencing style governs the whole format of your document, how you set out your subheadings, how you do your tables and figures. So it's not just about the reference list and the in-text citations, it's a lot of things going on there. In terms of the language of your research community, you'll all have your own discipline-specific discourse. Okay, a really simple one I have there as an example. So a respondent is usually what we use for a survey, and a participant is someone who has taken part in interviews or focus groups, so more qualitative. So that's a very simple example. Now, don't forget as well, with your discipline-specific discourses, sometimes you're going to have to tell the reader the definitions of some of those different terms as well. Don't assume that they always know. You're demonstrating that you know. All right, so I'm sorry if you're not a really keen writer and you find it hard to get motivated. Remember, this is part of today, is the pep talk to get you excited about writing. So the key thing to think of here is we don't have to be fully organized with all our thoughts and be totally clear. If you wait till that happens, you'll be waiting for a long time. So start writing straight away, because your thinking and your learning and your writing all go together. We want to think, we want to read, draft, proofread, seek feedback, and we go on it's iterative, backwards and forwards, and it's continuous. So that draft writing, it's essential. So it gives you the starting point for everything. You can't edit or polish up a blank page, can you? So my advice is write what's in your head, write what you're thinking. Don't worry about flow and structure initially, just write. And also, yes, you'll end up with one document at this point, a research proposal, but you're going to write over your degree, whether it's 1 year, 3 years, 6 years, you're going to write a lot of drafts, maybe hundreds. Okay, so as I said, if you're not a keen writer, you need to recognize the feelings as to why you're not a keen writer, and try to minimize any obstacles that are in your way. So if that's because you're not confident, you're not sure if you have the skills, or is it because you're still not clear about your content? Whatever it is, you've got to get over those obstacles. All right, proofreading is so important. I want you to seek feedback as often as you can, but what I don't want you to do is send a document to somebody that's full of silly errors. That doesn't get you off on the right foot. So again, attention to detail is really important when you're doing your proofreading time. Remember the macro and the micro? Hard to do them both at once, so separate it out. Sometimes just look at a paragraph and the sentences and the words, and then another time look at a whole section and see how everything flows. I've written there as well about printing and reading aloud. You're going to pick up the mistakes that you've made much more easier. If we read on the screen, our eyes go really fast. Research has shown that, and we skip a lot of the information. Okay, and we don't read it properly. Record keeping. Well, back up every day. That's in multiple places. That's the key there. But also version control. Keep track of your drafts. Never delete anything. There's no need to. You know, you can use a number system or a date system, whatever it is, especially when you're responding to feedback. You know, you want to be able to go back if you need to. And make sure you write yourself really good notes about why you've done something, where you're up to. So next time you sit down to look at that document, you know where you were at. All really important things to start thinking about now. Set up a long Word document. So if I had $1 for the number of students who leave this until a couple of days before they submit their final thesis, well, I would be rich. So don't be that person. Do it now. Set up a long Word document. Learn how to do it. It's a skill you need. It's all about the page setup, the subheadings, the margins, the fonts, the page breaks. There's a lot of information. Murray's just put in the chat where you can find it on HiQ. Use that information. Set up your master document now. And get in a good habit of sending your supervisor documents that are formatted correctly with page numbers, by the way. That's another thing I see all the time is documents with no page numbers. It's really hard to give you feedback then, okay? So what do productive research writers do? They write. So as I said, don't wait for a big block of time. If you're waiting to have a whole day to sit down and write, you will wait forever, okay? You need to do snack writing. You need to schedule in time to write, even if it's 20 minutes here, 1 hour here, 2 hours somewhere else. If you schedule it in, then hopefully you will do it, okay? But if you don't schedule it in, you won't do it. You'll get waylaid. You'll look at emails, you'll work, whatever else it might do, because writing is going to be the last thing that you want to do. So you sometimes, but I want to change your mind on that. So write those bad drafts and then improve them. So just write what you're thinking. Okay, and just this last bit here is another pep talk. Take control. You're the one in charge. No one else is going to do it for you. Plan, revise. You're going to be less anxious and stressed if you've got a good plan and you're feeling on track. And also, we can't work in isolation. As we said, writing and researching, it's a social construct. We need to engage with others. okay, through interaction. So don't isolate yourself. Make friends with your peers, engage with your supervisor. All right, so that was all a big pep talk really about getting organized and, you know, starting on the front foot with your writing habits. So let's talk about your actual proposal now. Okay, so every document has a purpose and an audience. So we need to be very clear about those things and achieve them. All right, so what are you demonstrating? Basically, what you're going to do, why, when, and how. That's the very basic version. You're also needing to convince your readers that your project is needed, that you can manage it, and that it's feasible. We need to make sure that the data is accessible, that you said you're going to collect. Do you have the time? Do you have the resources? Do you have the skills? Also, don't forget that your research design as part of your proposal is super important. Don't leave it till the end. It's the thing that your readers are going to critique most likely the most because they want to give you good feedback on it. And it's usually the basis for your ethics application as well. So you're wanting to demonstrate that you can participate in your research community. Remember that conventions we just talked about, you need to demonstrate that you know those and that you have the knowledge and the capability to do this research degree. So remember, that's what it is. Your proposal is saying, hey, this is the research that I want to do. Give me the green light to go ahead. All right, so then if we know what we're demonstrating, what exactly is the purpose? Now, I also want you to remember that your proposal is not going to be perfect. You're going to get some really constructive feedback. Then you're going to go and do the research and you're going to keep refining and improving, okay? But we still need it to, the proposal to inform and persuade the reader, which is the main purpose, isn't it, to let you go ahead and take on this research. So you need to convince the reader. Now, as we said at the beginning when I gave you that task about the research problem, it is the key, all right, your research problem. If there's no problem, why would we need to do the research in the first place? Okay, it's also important in your proposal that you demonstrate some expected insights and contributions that your research will make, and you need to make those explicit as well. So ultimately, as always, when we talk about writing, it is all about the reader. So who are your readers? Yes, initially I said it's you, then your supervisors, and then a panel or people in your faculty, whoever it is that's going to say you can go ahead and undertake your research. So they could potentially be an expert in your field, but they're not an expert in your study. You need to explain everything in a really clear way. And the fact that they are part of your research community is actually a good thing because they're engaged, they're interested, but we've got to keep them engaged and keep them interested. And then, as we said, persuade the reader that your research is significant and valuable. If it's not significant and valuable, why would you go ahead and do it? Okay, and the informing part is we want the reader to gain a deep understanding of what your research is all about. So if you can't articulate those things in your proposal, there's going to be a lot of questions, isn't it? And you haven't really demonstrated your critical thinking. So we really want to focus on that. We want to inform them about everything to do with your proposal, and we need to persuade them that it's worthwhile. All right, so as we said, has to start with the problem. This is the key. So have a think about which one of these, or maybe you've got something else that you're doing. And if you want to pop into the chat which one you're doing and jot down to talk about in your peer discussion. Is it experiments? Is it theory? Are you wanting to improve current practices of something? Yep, experiments, good. So really important to understand exactly what it is and how you're contributing to this problem. Yep, a current problem. So some of you are writing experiments, which is great, but I hope when you get into your discussion, you're going to give a little bit more information. Experiments about what? But that's okay in the chat. I understand. Oh, Catherine, good. Expanding on current theory. All right. And Fetty as well. Lovely. All right. So seems like you know what you're doing. Excellent. As we said, that's the place to start. Now, remember I mentioned research ethics and your research design part of the proposal. So it is the basis for your ethics. If you haven't already obtained ethics, some people do before, but usually not. Murray's just put in the chat the link to the Office for Research Ethics and Integrity website. It's excellent. Here's another example of you don't know what you don't know. So you need to go find out. Now, also, it is not unusual for ethics applications to come back because there's not enough detail. So don't feel bad. Just do what they've asked you to do and send it back. If they're giving you feedback or questioning your research methods, it's because you haven't explained them well enough. They want you to gain approval, okay? So don't get upset. Just realize, okay, they don't understand my research like I do, which means that I need to explain it in a clearer way. All right, so if you can fulfill all of those purposes that we just talked about, there was a lot, wasn't there? That's demonstrating your critical thinking, okay? This intangible concept of critical thinking. So if it fulfills that purpose, you're thinking critically and you're writing critically, which is fantastic. Okay, so how are we going to do this informing and persuading? So you do need to do both at the same time. So there's a lot going on. So let's have a look at how everything links. So as we just said, you've got all the purposes. You're going to make a plan. Excuse me. You're going to write lots of drafts. You're going to seek feedback. You're going to be a sponge and learn everything that you need to know about writing and researching and your content, of course. Then you're going to implement some strategies that are effective for writing, effective for researching, and keep practicing, keep seeking feedback and improving your confidence. Then you're going to get to that critical thinking and writing, where you are able to demonstrate your understanding of your research field and the conventions and how your research community writes. And ultimately, you're going to contribute to a body of knowledge. So everything is all interlinked. All right, so what's next? What are we going to do? Don't wait, you can start right now. So you can see there's some potential subheadings there. Everyone's going to be different. You might not even have all of these, okay? But there's some potential ones there. But what you can do right now is write some key terms that you need to define. Remember, you've already written some notes about your problem. So within that, there's probably some important concepts that you would need to define. So have a think about what they may be. Okay. So this proposal that you're writing, it's your research story. And then eventually you're going to have a dissertation or a thesis, which is still a story, but it's not fiction, is it? It's non-fiction. But even despite it being non-fiction, we still have a beginning and a middle and an end. You've got your characters, all your stakeholders, your participants, your underpinning theory, the research design. So in that introduction section or chapter, whatever it might be in this particular document you're writing now, you need to inform and persuade the reader that there's a problem. In the lit review, you're going to give more evidence around that problem and the research gap. And then in your methodology section or chapter, whatever it is that you're doing, well, how are we going to investigate and potentially solve the problem? Even if you're not solving the problem, you're still going to gain insights that are going to be a step towards that. So what about a bit of a roadmap? That's always a good idea, to have an idea where you're going. Now, as we said, you're writing all different types of documents. Some are quite long for confirmation, maybe. If you're doing an MPhil, it might be a lot shorter. It may not even be 3,000 words. It might be less. It's all scalable though. So start with how many words you think you need, and then figure out how many sections you need. We had a little bit of an idea of the subheadings just before, didn't we? So if you take those into consideration, you should have an idea of some sections. Remember, some information in each section will be repeated as well. So if you're writing 10,000 words, is every chapter or section going to be exactly the same? No, it's not. Okay. The likelihood is that the introductory chapter or sections is going to be quite a little bit less than the lit review and the research design. Okay. So by having a bit of a roadmap organized, that's going to help you to get started. And you can start anywhere. You don't have to start at the beginning, other than your research problem, of course. If you've got an idea of your milestones and you keep on revising and you schedule planning time, you're going to meet your targets. Okay, so that's what your roadmap is about, is meeting those targets. Now, even though I want you to write a roadmap, I want you to be flexible as well. You don't know what's going to change. You don't know what feedback you're going to receive. So we need to be flexible. Write really good notes as well about everything that you're doing and the decisions that you make, and about why you've put something in a certain section or in a certain structure, because you'll forget. Okay, but make the decision, leave yourself a note, and keep on going. If you come up with a better idea, great. But you need to get started, that's for sure. As we keep saying, the reader is so important. You need to be in their shoes, which is actually a bit of a hard skill, to be honest. It can be. So that's why getting feedback is so important, because that'll increase your ability to think about the reader. It's a dialogue between you and the reader. And also, don't forget, your reader is not sitting next to you. So everything needs to be super, super clear. And that's your job as the writer. You need to put it all together. Don't make your reader work hard. You need them to be reading your proposal and saying, okay, I see, rather than going, I don't understand what's happening. That's not what we want at all. All right. Now, if you get feedback that says you haven't made all the connections, that's okay. You can reword, you can add a sentence. Sometimes a table or a figure can help, or giving an example, okay? But you can't be cross at a reader for saying, I don't get it, all right? It's not their fault, it's your fault. But the good thing is that you can improve and you can make it more clear, because you've got that feedback that says it's not clear. That last one about providing important information early. So with your proposal, no matter how long it is, if it's 10 pages, if it's 40 pages, don't make the reader wait. Don't make the reader wait to find out your research problem and why it's significant and who's going to benefit. That needs to come in the very first paragraph that they read. Okay, and then you keep repeating over and over again. So we're going to come back again to this idea of the research problem. It is the key to everything. Once you've got that nailed down and articulated in a really clear way, everything can go from that. So as we said before, it could be a gap in knowledge. It's about current processes or practices. Maybe there's a societal issue that we need to fix. But what we need to do in that proposal, remember, is we're informing and persuading, but we need to make it very clear that this is urgent. We need to get onto this now. We can't wait. It's challenging. That's why we need research into it. It's having some kind of negative impacts, but these can be resolved through the insights and the findings that your research is going to yield. Okay, that needs to be said at the very beginning of your document and repeated through and through and through. Okay, give them, the reader, the information, and then tell them why it's important. Give them some more information and tell them why it's important. So we do need that problem, but it needs to be manageable. Don't make it too big. If you are doing a PhD and you've got 3 years or 6 years, that will go very fast. If you're doing a master's, you've got 1 year, that will go even faster. Okay, needs to be manageable, not too big. Okay, so where are we going to start with that? Is using the literature. Every time you read an article, what's their research problem? Is it clear? Have they suggested avenues for future research? That's a really good way for you to start articulating your problem. And then you've got all those questions again. Surely someone has proposed some kind of solution, perhaps. Depends how new your research field is. So if someone has proposed solutions, how come they're not okay? Why do we need your research? You need to say. So it all links. So once you know your problem, then you can write, well, what's the background of the problem? How did we end up with this problem? Because no one spent any time on it. No one put any money into it because something has changed. So once you've done the background, you can figure out your aim. Can we have the previous slide? Sure. But I do have to move on. All right. So once you know, that's okay. Once you know the research problem, then it's the research aim comes from that, or the research purpose, depending on what field of research you're in. So if we know the problem, we can articulate what the aim is. They should be related. And then what's the significance is, well, what's going to be made better, okay, by your research findings. Once you know your aim and your significance, then you can articulate even more clearly the gaps. So exactly what is it that we need to know? What do we already know? From that, once you know your purpose and your significance, then you've got your research questions and your research design. They are all interlinked. Your research design has to be able to answer your research questions. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But everything comes and stems from that problem, okay? So what about this research gap? Okay, so that's what your literature review is partly about. And you're using that gap as a reason to persuade the reader that you need to do your research. It's also giving us a little bit of the so what as well. Oh, thanks, Murray. Murray's put the slides up on Blackboard. Excellent. Okay, yes, so your so what is partly the gap. And it's also, if you're contributing to helping fill that gap, remember, you need to contribute knowledge to your field of research. And so that should be, that's what the gap's related to. Who will benefit from your research as well? So they're all intertwined. So what about this literature review? I'm not going to go into it too much today because we've actually got a workshop in a couple of weeks and also a writing circle. But basically the strategies around the literature review is about reading and writing. While you're reading, you should be writing some good notes as well. You should be reading critically. There's that word again. So all that means is asking questions. Don't just believe what you're reading. I'm sure that you don't, but really question everything that you're reading. Question the research methods of an article. Have a look at their problem and their aim. Do they link? Is there a clear research purpose? Do you have to wait for paragraphs and paragraphs to find out what the research problem is? Well, it's not well written then, is it? So really think about how you're feeling as you're reading, but I don't want you to just look at the content. I want you to look at how they're writing. What are their mechanics like? What language are they using? How do their paragraphs flow? Have they got transition signals leading you through? And what did you learn? And what's missing? Obviously, they don't have all the answers. There's a tool there that our team has come across recently. It's actually quite useful. It helps you to connect to a lot of different papers related to a similar topic. I also encourage you to use concept maps, do up some kind of table so you can really keep track and compare and contrast all the literature, because that's what you need to be doing. That's where your critical thinking comes in, isn't it? You're comparing, contrasting what's missing, what do we know? Okay. So as we said, everything's linked, isn't it? And it needs to be linked and clear throughout your document. You need to have a common thread that goes straight through. Don't worry about repeating. Repeating is good, okay? Keep reminding the reader about the problem and the significance, okay? Now, if you can get a few key words about those common thread items, the problem, the gap, the significance, keep them in your head, write them up, write a poster, put it up on your wall, put it in the mirror in your bathroom so you don't forget. They need to be in the forefront of your mind because you need to keep reminding the reader, informing and persuading, okay? And part of the way we're going to do that is by keep on reminding them exactly what we want them to know. So talking about writing, of course, words is something we need to have a think about. So you want to convey your voice and make your stance clear, and words do that. The words that you choose have meaning, okay? So use your reporting verbs wisely. You can see the difference between, there's a difference between claims and questions, isn't there? And assert, argues. Argues is a strong verb. Okay, so really think about the words that you're using and use a lot. You know, academic writing should be, how do we say, very descriptive. I want to say descriptive, but I don't want to mean that you're just describing, but by using verbs and adjectives and adverbs. Adverbs modify verbs, adjectives modify nouns. Okay, by using strong words and the right words, you put your meaning across, you demonstrate your critical thinking. So don't just say there are differences between something. What kind of differences? Small differences, distinct differences. Something has influenced something else. How has it influenced? In a positive way, in a negative way? You know, you can really be clear to your reader by the words that you choose. The Manchester Phrase Bank, which Mari's just put into the link, is an excellent tool. I highly recommend that you use that regularly. So remember how I said read about how to write about research? I also want you to read about doing research. Books are good. Books is how, and reading is how we get a lot of our knowledge. Okay. Now, there's a couple of things about doing research that I've sort of put in there. Obviously, there's much more than that, but this will get you started. How are you going to choose your participants? That's your sampling. How are you going to collect the data? How are you going to analyze the data? Don't leave that to the last minute either. You really need to have that clear in your research proposal. Don't sort of say, oh, it's not very important. It's extremely important, and it's something your examiners or whoever's reading your research proposal, they will want to know exactly what you're going to do. Make friends with a librarian. Your faculty will have a dedicated librarian, if not two. Meet them, go and talk to them. What books do they recommend? I haven't recommended any particular ones here today, but if you wanted to email me, I can give you a few suggestions of really good ones that I've used. Whether or not they fit your field of research, we would have to double check that. But, you know, it's reading, as I said, that's how we gain our knowledge. So you're not, remember as well with the proposal, you're not expected to know everything about how you're going to undertake the study, but you need to start developing a good idea, and then you'll be getting your feedback from there. So I remember when I was doing one of my went my master's dissertation, and my supervisor wanted me to do critical discourse analysis. She said, this will be perfect. So I scoured everywhere for a book that was a step-by-step of critical discourse analysis. I didn't find one. It took a while. I did find a book that actually had it buried in there, and it did help me to some extent, but it took a lot of reading to even understand. Thanks. Great, Eric. So basically, critical discourse analysis. If you email me, I'll tell you the name of that book. It's basically describing and explaining the use of language in practice. So it's things like pausing, it's things like turn taking. Probably doesn't sound exciting to a lot of you, but it was very useful in the research that I was doing. But yes, it took a long time for me to work out exactly what I was doing, and a lot of reading. The other thing I did was in my PhD, I wanted to do a survey. I'm normally a qualitative research. This was something new I'd never done. So what did I do? I probably read about 10 books about how to design and implement a survey. So, and then I used all the bits and pieces from all of those. I'm not saying you have to read 10 books about everything if you're freaking out about 10 books, but figure out what you don't know, as we said, and read. That'll help you to get the answers. Seek feedback. I cannot emphasize this enough. How are you going to know if you're informing and persuading if you don't ask somebody? So we call this developing your evaluative judgment as well. The more you get feedback, the more you can judge the quality of your own work, figure out your strengths and your weaknesses and what you need to improve. Your supervisors, yes, they're an excellent source of feedback. Sometimes though, you might feel like they're a bit harsh. Even though they're doing everything they can to help you. But don't forget that a lot of the things that we've been talking about, the mechanics of writing, using language, lit review strategies, all of those things, a lot of it is invisible. You know, we've got to just learn by doing. And your supervisors know what they're doing. And they're going to assume at times that you do as well. So if you're not sure, don't be afraid to let them know. Just say, I'm not quite sure. I need to find out more. Can you suggest a book or some resources to help me? But don't forget, you've got other mentors, you've got peers. Peers might be a little bit less harsh because they understand that everything's a work in progress. So Ruth has asked, what kind of feedback should I be asking from them? So are you informing and are you persuading? So for example, if you've written a paragraph and you're not quite sure if the meaning is clear, say, is the meaning clear? I'm trying to say this. And, you know, ask them if you're not sure about the structure of something. Do you think, you know, do you think that this goes in this section or should I put it somewhere else? Whatever the actual question isn't, you know, that crucial. It's how are you feeling? What are your thoughts? What do you think is good? What do you think might not be good? If you ask them specific questions, they'll give you answers, I hope. If you just send a document, it's up to them, isn't it then? You know, so, and if you know that you make grammar mistakes sometimes, you can even say to your supervisor, look, I've proofread, I've tried to pick up most of my errors. There might be a few. Please don't focus on these. What I would like is feedback about the content in terms of, is my research problem clear? Have I articulated a clear research gap? All right. Is it specifically about written output only, Ruth's asking? I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that, but if you're thinking about the actual content or the research methods, you can definitely ask them, you know, if they think your research design is coming along well, if you think, have they got some other ideas maybe? So, you know, and within the idea of the written feedback, make sure you discuss with them as well. You know, try to get an opportunity to sit down with them, especially when you're not clear about the feedback. Okay. Hope that answered your question a little bit, Ruth. Basically, the feedback is what you are unsure about. All right, so we are running ahead of time, which I love. We're going to go into our breakout rooms. So what do we got? I have to do some maths now, which is always fun, not my strong suit. All right, so you are going to go in the breakout rooms, and I want you to make sure that you click the pop-up to join. Now, basically, I think we can probably have the 20 minutes because we're running a bit ahead of time, so that's good. I did sort of think 15, but we'll see how we go. So I'm going to put you in groups of 3 to 4. I find that they work well because some people are talkative, some people prefer to listen. So that way you should all get a turn. Make sure that everyone gets a turn. So you're going to share your research problem that you've written down, I hope, and 1 or 2 of the benefits of your research findings. So now I am going to pop you in, and I will see you back soon. Well, 15 to 20 minutes. I'll send a prompt to say we're coming back. All right, off you go. Okay. All right, so thinking and writing critically, that's our next session. But guess what? You just did critical thinking. Right. You just did critical thinking just then. Okay. You had a critical discussion with your peers. So it wasn't all that hard, was it? So make sure you connect with your peers as often as you can, and your supervisors, of course. All of these things on the slide are critical thinking. Being open-minded, using effective writing strategies that we just looked at, making a plan, writing your drafts, being autonomous and an active learner, reflecting on your actions and your decisions about what can be improved to achieve better outcomes. It's all critical thinking. Okay, and as I said, you just engage in a critical discussion. Doesn't matter if you don't know exactly what your proposal is yet and what your problem is, but just by talking to someone about it, you might have had some light bulb moments. All right. So remember how we're saying that the research problem is so important and it's the key to everything. Let's use our critical thinking right now and look at those 2 examples that I gave you at the beginning. So remember, one of the problems was that HDR students often feel anxiety and stress. Well, okay, we can see how that might be a problem, but so what? So what does it matter? What do we care if you're feeling anxiety and stress? Well, you care and I care because this is a big part of your research degree, isn't it? The writing part of it. You know, you've got to write up about what you've done with your research. So the so what is it's going to make your experience better. It's also going to be, if you have less anxiety and stress, you're going to finish your degree, which is super important, and we want you to do that. So there's a few so whats around that. We'd need to be really clear though, wouldn't we? It's a bit vague at the moment. And what about the benefits? Who benefits if you're more confident writers? So it's not really feasible that all these people and you know, it's a long stretch to say society would benefit, but the more researchers we have, the more research output that we have, the more we know, then yes, society will ultimately benefit. But if this was my research proposal, I couldn't promise that. It would be far too big. The government, again, too big. So we would focus on students and supervisors realistically for the benefit, the people that will benefit. What about example 2? Again, a little bit vague, isn't it? So which patients? Where are these patients? Are we talking about them being actually admitted into hospital? If their nausea is that bad, maybe they are. So is that a bed that we have to use because, you know, we haven't been able to reduce their nausea? So again, it's not really clear enough, is it? So keep these things in mind. It needs to be articulated in a really clear way exactly what your research problem is. Who benefits if the nausea is reduced for chemo patients? Patients, yes. Hospitals, bit of a stretch, but then actually they would, because the healthcare providers are part of the hospital and so are the patients. So if we can make them feel better, they might not have to stay overnight. They'll be able to go home. Patients' families, yes. But again, society in general, yes, ultimately, but not from my project if this is what I was doing. And government, well, yes, because as we said, they are actually coming up with the money for public hospitals anyway. But you can see how, even though we can be quite broad with our benefits, I want you to think about who exactly is going to benefit. And usually with your research problem, it's your direct participants. Okay, so with example 2, if it was purely the patients who are participating, then they would be the ones who are mainly going to benefit, aren't they? But what if I'm interviewing healthcare providers as well? So then we'd have 2. Okay, for example 1, if I'm not asking supervisors anything, yeah, they might have a benefit, but it's not very direct, is it? Because I haven't included them as a participant as such. So by extension, yes, they would have benefit because they might have less anxious and stressed students. But you can see how it's okay to start off broad, but we do need to narrow in. And that's what your critical thinking is for. Okay, so what exactly do we mean? Well, it's not a tangible thing, is it? It's something we do in our heads, but it's something we just do every single day and all through the day. So think about your decision to deciding about what degree you're going to do, where are you going to do it. That's critical thinking. Another really good example that I saw when I was reading yesterday, and also my son who's in grade 11, talking to his maths teacher. And remember when you did maths tests and you got marks for your working out, didn't you? So even if you got the wrong answer, if you've got your working out there, the teacher's able to allocate some marks to you there because they can see your thinking process. This is the same. You want to show your thinking progress. This is how we're starting with the problem and this is how we've progressed. Okay, so it's the informing is part of it and using that information to construct a clear argument that persuades your readers. It's everything we're doing in the lit review, the comparing, the contrasting, the evaluating. Now look there again in bold, making judgments. You're using your critical thinking to make judgments and to argue why those judgments are right. Again, about your concepts and your content, and it's bringing the document purpose and the skills to achieve those purposes, bringing them together as well. So it's all the small parts of your research and it's the big picture as well. And also don't forget that research design, so important. It's going to be critiqued. So you want to be able to justify. We'll have a look at that a little bit more in a second. Another way to look at it is surface learning versus deep learning. So have a think about which one you're doing at different times as you know, over the next couple of weeks and months. Are you surface learning or are you deep learning? So surface is what we were doing a little bit when we were undergrads, where we're recalling, memorizing all the content and describing and summarizing. But now we want to do deep learning. We're questioning, we're looking at all the different perspectives, we're testing the evidence, and we're taking a strong stance. So it's a little bit like comparing descriptive and critical as well. We often get you might get feedback from your supervisor that says you're being too descriptive. Now, the descriptive is the informing. You need that, but you also need the critical part as well. So describing something that happened, the critical part is, okay, well, what were the consequences of what happened? Descriptive is you saying, okay, we've got option 1 or we've got option 2. The critical is saying, well, what's the best option for the situation based on the evidence? So that's a really good example of us using critical thinking in our daily life, weighing up. Shall I go to McDonald's for dinner tonight? It'll be quick and easy, but I'll feel yucky afterwards. Sorry if you own a McDonald's. But you can see what I'm saying. We do these things all the time. So it's not like you're learning a new skill that you've never used before. Of course, you're using it all the time. It's also about looking at all the different variables and then saying, why are these variables important? So the variables regarding your research is what I mean there. You can describe all the different moving parts of your research, but so what's the so what? Why are they important? Why are you telling us this information? So again, with words, we're talking about finding your voice. All right, so please don't have paragraphs and paragraphs of just citations. Yes, you need the citations, of course you do, but we want to know what your voice is. What do you think? And you do that with your topic sentences. You do that with your, this is important because, this shows, this suggests, those sentences. Go to that Manchester phrase bank. So with finding your voice, it's because you're going to be confident in the work you've done. You've done all the reading, you've done all the thinking and the drafting, and you can be confident that you've done the work. And so put your voice out there. We want to know what you think. And as I said, words have power, so use them to convey your voice. All right, so what are the barriers to critical thinking and writing critically? Again, it's about your confidence. You know, we are all going to feel that imposter syndrome at some stage, expect it, have some ways to get over it. You're not an imposter, you're meant to be here. You wouldn't have been accepted if you weren't meant to be here. No, you're not going to know all the answers straight away, but you will find them. I promise that you'll find them, and it might take a while. It might take a lot of thinking and drafting, but you will get them. Sometimes where a barrier is, well, we don't get it, we don't understand. It's like me with my critical discourse analysis. You know, I just couldn't get my head around it, and I finally found someone who gave some instructions that made sense, and the light bulb came on. So you've got to keep reading and thinking and asking questions. The other thing which I talked about just before is about having an open mind to new perspectives. And that's why it's so important to not isolate yourself and to talk to people and, you know, put forward what you're thinking might be a good idea, and then they might have a different angle. It doesn't mean yours is wrong. It just means it's a different way to look at it. And that can sometimes really help us to break through if we're struggling a little bit. So be active, don't be passive, and ask a lot of questions and do a lot of reading and thinking, and then you've got to write as well. So when you're doing your lit review, that's demonstrating your critical thinking and your critical writing. Just to see you, Megan. I'll send you all the stuff about the slides. You'll be able to find them. So with your literature review, just the process of deciding what to put in and what to leave out, that's critical thinking. Especially with your proposal, you're limited in how much you can write. In your final thesis, you'll be able to write a lot more, but so it's really important that you're clear and you're concise and you can explain to the reader what you're doing and why. You can make a statement and say, you know, that there is a lot of literature, but because of a word, you know, you've focused on these specific papers or researchers for these specific reasons. Let them know what's happening. Explain the structure. Why have you started talking about one thing before another thing? Explain why. Seminal researchers, make sure you include those. That's something that your readers will expect. And also just all those connections between your sources, the comparisons, what's there, what's missing, what's the gap, what's the significance, all those things in your lit review that you're doing, that is your critical thinking. So if you articulate everything and say what everything means, explain it, and then explain why it's important, you're doing your informing and your persuading, which is your critical writing. Now, remember we keep talking about how important the research design is. One of the ways and places to start is your philosophical worldview. Now, this is complicated. I'm not going to really say much about it except just to pose the question of what is your worldview. So basically, this will underpin your whole research design. Now, I'm a constructivist because I believe that to find out about students' experiences, I need to talk to them. I need to find out about their lived experiences. But when I did my PhD research, I also could see that post-positivists, so empirical research, was important as well. So one aspect of measuring is to do a survey, isn't it? Well, the survey is the method, the questionnaire is the instrument. So I've worked out how to implement and design a questionnaire, and I also taught myself how to do SPSS so I could analyze the survey data. So it is okay to have more than one, but you would usually lean towards one more than another, and it will depend on your research field. So if you want to write into your chat, if you know. Now, as I said, in your proposal, don't forget this is a short document. You won't have much room to write much about this, but I would flag it somewhere, somehow, because if you don't, then your readers might think you don't know or you haven't thought about it. So even if it's one sentence at this point, check with your supervisor, see what they say. Maybe it's not appropriate for the study that you're doing. Yep, all right, we've got a lot of mixtures coming through, some constructivists, some pragmatists. There's no right or wrong. That's one of the good things, you know, there's no right or wrong about these, although if you're a post-positivist, maybe you think constructivists are wrong. I don't know. But it is something to consider because that underpins, as well as your problem, of course, how you're going to design your study. Yes, you can list Indigenous, of course. All right. So this is part of your critical thinking, pulling it all together. What's underpinning your research design is, yes, your problem and the type of problem it is and who your participants are, but also what fits in your research field, because your worldview underpins what methodology you're doing. Are you doing qualitative or quantitative? And your methods, how are you collecting the data? How are you analyzing the data? They are all connected. Remember, we keep talking about the links, all right? Now, your research problem, whatever that is, it must be very clear, and your worldview and your methodology and your methods are all linked to that, okay? So when you're reading as part of your lit review and just you're gaining your knowledge, where do researchers in your field normally position themselves? Is there something you can do that's different, or would that be a little bit too crazy? Making sure your problem and your worldview links, and maybe you're doing something new in your field. I know for me, with my theory was academic literacy when I was doing researching students' experiences, and yep, mostly constructivist. There wasn't not many no previous researchers had done a survey, so that was something that I did. That was one reason. So the survey then informed the questions for the case studies in my constructivist part. Okay, so good idea to have a think about that. So your research design is going to demonstrate your critical thinking. Remember, it has to be robust. So that means it has to stand up to lots of questions. It has to be ethical, of course, and manageable. Can you obtain the data? How are you going to collect and analyze? Please don't think of the data analysis as an afterthought. It is so, so important. You will be asked about how you're going to analyze it. So really make sure that you've thought this through. Are you able to gain access to your participants? So that problem, or the hypothetical problem about chemo patients, how am I going to get access to them? Particularly if they're feeling really sick, are they going to want to talk to me? Potentially not. So that could be a problem, couldn't it? Do you have all the equipment you need? Do you have the resources that you need? Do you have the research skills? Remember, I had to teach myself SPSS. I had to figure out how to write and design and implement a survey. It took me a long time. I don't regret it, but it was something that I had to think about as part of my whole process. Safety of the participants and the researchers, that comes back to your ethics, of course. So, and also, I know this is your proposal, you haven't done the research yet, but think about how you're going to present the findings and discussion. So if you are doing mixed methods, what's informing what? How are you going to present this much data that you're potentially going to gather and analyze? So start thinking about that now. That's a tip, because I didn't really do that, and I had to do, I had about plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D was the one that finally worked. So think about that now. All right, so critical thinking, again, is about being able to justify your decisions. Why have you decided to do this research design? Why have you come up with this particular problem? What's your motivation? Why didn't you cover this stream of literature? How come you've only looked at one type? How come you're not looking at other research areas? Why aren't you going to, with your participants, maybe you only have time to collect data from one lot of participants. Maybe you can't do two. Will I have time for students and supervisors with my research into anxiety and writing? Maybe, maybe not. But the question will come up, if I'm not including supervisors, the question will come up, why aren't you? So I need to have an answer. With your theories as well, often there's, a dozen theories related to something, like there is with linguistics. There's so many different theories about how we learn a language. You can't use them all. You need to choose one, and you need to justify why it's appropriate. So this is why we need that really tight link between everything, because that is definitely part of your justification. So you can expect lots of questions around your research design, also the literature that you've reviewed as well. Now, just remember the purpose of our proposal is to inform and persuade and say, yes, we have a problem that's worthwhile researching. But you're also not expected to know every single thing. If you have a well-written document that's really clear, you're going to get really constructive feedback, and you might end up changing a few things. But that initial document needs to be well-written to get that good constructive feedback. So improve your feedback literacy, really important. I know I keep talking about feedback. So feedback literacy is your ability to be an effective participant. It's two-way, okay? Don't be passive. Ask the questions around what you want to know. Ask for clarification. If you disagree with the feedback, that's okay. You can explain why, and you can have a discussion about it. Reduce your emotions, breathe. Don't respond straight away. Shut the laptop down, go for a walk and come back. So final tips and pep talk. Right, writing's going to be a habit, isn't it? Yes, we're going to schedule regular short writing sessions every week. We're going to proofread our own work, seek feedback, and not isolate ourselves. At the end, you're not going to regret the time you spent writing. You're going to regret the time you didn't spend writing. Remember, the writing and the thinking, they're going together. So another activity, I want you to write down right now, where are you going to write? When are you going to write? And what are you going to write? If you want to write any of that in the chat, you can, but if just on a piece of paper or in your diary, if it's this afternoon or tomorrow, I'll be very happy. So the where, is that at home? Is it the library? Is it your office? What's the obstacles to writing at home? What's the obstacles to writing in the office? Maybe you need to go somewhere completely different. Maybe you need to go in the garden. Maybe you need to go to a park, a coffee shop. Who knows? Figure out the best place for you. When are you going to do it? What kind of person are you? Morning person, night person? What are your other commitments? Really important to anticipate all the obstacles that are going to stop you from writing. And you've got some subheadings we talked about earlier. So that could be your what. Your physical and mental health is so, so important. This is a long journey. It's challenging. Oh, nice. On the train. Oh, that's excellent. I can't do that. I get motion sickness, but yes, good one. Home office late at night. Excellent. Cool. All right. So you guys that are already making some goals, you'll be able to reward yourself, which is good. Take time out. If you need a day off, take a day off. Okay. It's going to be better than struggling in front of the computer for 5 hours, not getting much done at all. Your friends and your family. So I know what it's like when people are saying, oh, how's your research going? And you're like, oh, please don't ask me that. Don't be like that. Be nice. They're just interested. They want to know. Practice your elevator pitch. Talk about what you're thinking. Use them. They're your cheerleaders. They're the ones that love you and know you the best. Reach out if you're struggling. Don't compare yourself to others. And please ask for help, all right? We are here to help you. Your supervisors are here to help you. And be confident. Remember, at the very beginning, my aim was to try to help you guys be more confident. I hope that has happened. I know we've talked about a lot of things, but, you know, go back over the slides and pull out at least just a couple of things that you think, aha, this is going to be really helpful for me. Increase your confidence, manage your time, and connect. So, takeaways for today. The value of your research, it needs to be explicit, okay? You're doing that through your thinking and your critical writing. You now know the purpose of your document. You know who your audience is. They're in your research community. They are interested in your research. Let's go further and really engage and persuade them. Don't make the reader work hard. You need to schedule that writing time. A few of you have done that in the chat. Thank you. That's great. Now, we did a couple of activities today, didn't we? So there you go. You've got somewhere to start. Get to it. Right, just before we get to the Q&A, we're right on time. Just a couple of promotions. We have HDR Writing Peer Feedback Sessions. Perfect place for you to get feedback on your drafts and get that critical discussion time. There's the link. The next one's not till probably for 4 weeks because of Easter. We've also got Tasha's HDR Writers Wellbeing Lounge. That's where you can do your writing. There's a focus on mental health, which is great. You get to connect with your peers again. There's the link that Mari's just put in the chat. So there's actually a lounge on Thursday. So go ahead and register for that. Tomorrow, our careers educator has a how to be more competitive in research, grow your network. Don't forget, you're going to have a career after you've finished all this research writing. So, and also you've got the academic skill, the HDR skills tool that we looked at the beginning. Literature review fundamentals is 18th of March and the next peer feedback sessions in April. So more information about all of these things we've talked about. HiQ, you get an e-update every fortnight. It's emailed to you with all the information about everything that we have on with Gred. All right, so that was a lot, I know, but we are right on time. And people that are still here, which is some of you, actually quite a few of you, so that's great. Comments, questions in the chat, unmute your mic, whatever you feel comfortable. Oh, yep, we got somebody. Yay.
Hi. I was just doing the 18th of March literature review. Somehow I've missed that and haven't got it in my calendar. Is there
a link for that? Yes,
yeah.
there is. If you Actually, I can probably.
And is that like for this particular, because this is attached to the unit, right?
To Greg, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the second one of 2 or 3 workshops?
The workshop is the workshop that I'm talking about is the first one. I'm just putting the link for you now.
Thank you.
So that takes you to HiQ, and then you can see information about it. 18th of March, 10 a.m. There will be another one. We do the workshops twice a year, each semester, and the writing circles are then, so there's a literature review writing circle. So we'll talk about the fundamentals, and then we'll do some practice in the writing circle, basically. There's no workshop for stage 2. This was it. Your stage 2 is a research proposal. It's just smaller.
Well, I'm so sorry. Quick question. So,
Yep.
I think Ahmed has some funny noise coming through.
Ahmed, can you mute? Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's okay. Sorry, I'm just a master's student, but
you're not just. You are a master's student.
But so, being a master's student, this is the only workshop that is sort of a main workshop before doing the proposal, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Heaps of information on HiQ as well. So everything we talked about, you're just going to do in a squished way, if you make sense. If you still need all those bits, you just aren't going to write very much initially because it's quite short. You may not need to say anything about your worldview. It depends on what your research design is, but you definitely still need, it's similar purpose. You need a research problem. You need to show the value. So it's all scaled, basically. Yeah. So do you know how long your document needs to be?
The proposal, no. It's broken up into sections. Yeah, I can't.
Okay. Yep.
Barely. It's not that big.
No. So you need to be very clear, and you need to be really concise as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
It's Robert here. I've got a question.
Hey.
So when I wrote my application for the PhD, it was in that same format as the stage 2 proposal.
Yep.
And it started off about 20 pages and it came down to 10. Much more detail from that point, because it has all those questions answered, the literature review, the question, the gap in the knowledge, where it's going to fill that gap. So is it going to look much different than the official application process?
Are you talking about your confirmation document?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, because it's going to be longer. You're going to go deeper in. You're going to have more literature. So usually you have 3 chapters in the confirmation, depends on what your supervisor says, but normally chapter 1 is your introduction where you set the scene. Chapter 2 is your lit review. Chapter 3 is your research methods, your research design. That's going to be much bigger than it was, I would say, in your proposal, because you really need to have a very clear idea of your research design. You're going to get asked a lot of questions about that in your confirmation, but as we said, you'll be ready for it. And it'll be things like, well, but why are you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? But you'll be ready because you'll have your justification. So definitely much more in the literature review and the research design, I would say. That beginning part, the chapter 1, if that's what you're doing in chapters, it probably will have a little bit extra, but a lot of it, as you said, would be quite similar. But yeah, you would be getting, because realistically that lit review for your confirmation document, that is going to be the basis for your final one. Yeah, you'll add a little bit more as you go, but it would definitely be much bigger than it was for your stage 2.
So typically, was it be 10,000 words?
Depends on your faculty. I wouldn't want to sort of have a guess. What faculty are you in?
Business law.
Okay, business and law. Well, are you in law or business? Because that would be
Business.
in business. Yeah. Double check with your supervisor what their expectations, but yeah, I would say 10,000 sounds about right. So you're in that case, if you thought about 1,000 for chapter 1 and about 3 or 4 for the other two chapters, lit review and methods, but definitely methods. That's the one I'd be really focusing on.
So this is stage 2, or this is confirmation?
Confirmation.
Oh, what's that? I'm talking stage 2.
Oh, you're talking to stage 2. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it wouldn't be. I don't think stage 2 would be 10,000 words. No.
Yeah, so the confirmation would be another year or so away, I think.
Exactly.
Stage 2 is within 3 or 6 months.
Yep. So stage 2, you're planting all the seeds, so
then the answer is probably it's not that far different on the application given
correct.
supervisors who it took them 2 months to write this.
Yep.
After about 100 drafts.
That's it. Exactly right.
Okay, thanks.
No worries. So I've got a question here about plagiarism when writing a review paper. I'm not sure what you mean exactly by a review paper. If you mean, maybe if you're saying plagiarism level, you're talking about using Turnitin. In that case, it depends because Turnitin picks up your reference list. It picks up all sorts of things. That's a hard one, Jasmine. I'd be talking to your supervisor, but no plagiarism basically would be what I would say, and cite everything. Yeah, the confirmation is definitely an expansion of stage 2. Yes, it is. And as we were just saying, the confirmation document is going to have a much bigger literature review and a much bigger methods section as well, where the research methods in particular, where you will be going into that whole background of worldview, methodology, and linking everything and justifying what the research methods, because that's the bit in your confirmation seminar that they're really going to put a spotlight on. Fatima's asking about uploading the recorded workshop, and that answer is yes, we do. What other? There's no more questions in the chat. Still got quite a few of you in. Has anyone got any other things they wanted to ask? Any comments? There's no recording yet because I haven't finished recording. The slides are.
So actually, I was talking about the recording for any previous sessions.
Yeah.
So I cannot find it, so I'm not quite really searching on the web place. But
in the academic writing section of Blackboard.